Hey everyone, this is Khara Crossway Brindle. Welcome back to the channel. I have a new guest with us. I have Belinda, who's going to share all the cool things she's up to. But how I got to know Belinda is through this financial therapy money space for therapists. So very happy to have you here, Belinda. Want to share some info with our viewers?
Yes, fantastic. I love what you're doing and really like showing therapists what's possible. And I have a similar bend, right, to really help female business owners. And we actually have several therapists that we have worked with because of they're struggling with exactly what we do and helping women to really bust through that income ceiling that often happens around the like 50K to 250K mark, where it's kind of like, okay, wait a second, I want to grow, but I've run out of hours. Like, I don't want to have to work harder. I don't want to have to face burnout. I don't want to have to neglect my family. Like, I want a life. How do I make it happen? And then that's where we come in and really help you look at how do you get more strategic and what you're selling, what you're charging, and how are you managing and planning your money. Most times, money is like an afterthought for people, and then they get paid accordingly. Like they get paid the scraps that the business leaves over because they're treating money in that kind of way in their business. And I just feel like there's so much opportunity to really learn how to use money as a tool. So, yeah,
Yeah,
let's
and
do it. Let's talk.
I
Yeah.
feel like you're one of the professionals that's kind of echoed this like treat yourself like the CEO of your company because you are. Like don't take the scraps. Like think about this from the get-go of I'm the CEO of my company and here's what that means
Yeah.
financially, right?
Yeah, most people treat themselves like the overworked employee, and I think that part of it is that most of us came from a corporate. I mean, there's in a lot of ways, like just our school system and our college system trains us to be a good employee. So it's like totally different when we're trying to actually be an entrepreneur. Like it's going against the grain of how we've been trained, right? Like
Right.
we've been trained to ask for permission. And as an entrepreneur, it's like, no, you actually have to take risks and you have to give yourself the permission to take the risks and do the like unsafe things. And there's just so many things when you take a step back, you're like, oh, right. Like that's what I know how to do. And entrepreneurship is like basically 180 degrees in the other direction. It's like, don't do what everybody else is doing. Disrupt the industry. Do the thing that feels innovative, meet a need that's not being met yet.
Mhm.
And I think that it takes a real decision to say, I'm not just going to be an employee. I'm going to be the CEO. And as the CEO, I need to be able to dig into my numbers. Like I have to be willing to look. And sometimes we think like ignorance is bliss. Ignorance is really costly. Like it's really
Yeah.
expensive when you feel like you're stressing and guessing in your business and running um running it almost blindfolded. Like when people don't
Mhm.
really know the results. Like now, we're in kicking off February here, right? And I'll talk to people and they won't know like what their revenue was last year. Like I get that maybe
Mhm.
your bookkeeper is still working on stuff and you're still trying to figure out your expenses perhaps, but like we should be able to be pretty close to what your profit is based on at least what was through November and what happened in December. But all the people
Right.
it'll be like 6 months behind. Like they'll come to me and they'll just like, well, I have a spreadsheet or I'm using QuickBooks, but I'm not keeping it up to date. And I'm just like, how are you running your business? Like, how do you
Yeah.
know how much your business is bringing in? How do you know how much you're spending? How do you know how much you can pay yourself? And they're like, well, that's part of the problem. That's why I'm calling you. I don't really know.
Right.
And you'd be amazed sometimes, I think, at how many people can have six-figure businesses and still be a bit of a mess behind the scenes, right? Like there's some
Mhm.
chaos happening there. And I don't judge. I have been through my own like chaos at home with bills and mail and overwhelm and all the things. Sometimes I still have to watch that I don't let the bills pile up because like my dad had a stroke and I was put in charge of everything and on the road 5 or 6 days a week, like it got out of hand. And at the same time, I think that's why I can understand, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like how stressful it can be. And I also had my second year in business, where I grossed $155,000 and I took home $2,000. And literally everybody else got paid except for me, right? Because I
Mhm.
wasn't owning the profits, right? Like the prioritizing profits in the business. I was just listening to all the coaches that were like, just focus on revenue. Like if you bring in
Mhm.
more revenue, the profit will happen. And then it was like, there's a part of me, I mean, I'm a CPA originally, right? Like I came from the corporate big accounting firm. And I think there was a part of me that was like, really? Because that's not how I've seen it work for the bigger companies. But I was like, I'll try it in this online space. And it didn't. Like, I remember being in tears opening up that email
Mm,
with my final results. And I was like, I just worked my ass off last year. Like, how is this
right.
even possible? But until we learn how to prioritize profit in our offers and in our planning, that can absolutely happen. Like that was a reality for me, and I think it happens for a lot more people than they talk about. I was just at an
Okay.
event last week and we were talking about paying yourself because I am a big believer in being able to pay yourself. And she was like, "No, I haven't paid myself yet." And I was like, "How long have you been in business?" She was like, 3.5 years. I'm like, we need to
Mm,
fix that. Even if we have to start out at 500 or $1,000 and work our way up per month, I want you to feel like you're actually getting paid from all
right.
of the efforts that you're putting in, and that your household can feel some of the benefits of all of the efforts that you're putting in. I think that there's also some guilt sometimes that people will have, like, oh, my partner is supporting us while I'm building. And it's like, there's a way to do both. Like, yes, they can be supportive and they can help out with more. And I want you to feel like you're not a volunteer in an unintentional nonprofit, because that's how I felt, right? Like that you're
Yeah.
actually making money in the business. So we have this pay yourself calculator. I'll get you the link for so you can include, and then you just figure out, like, what do we need our revenue to be for the business based on what you want to get paid, so that you're
Mhm.
not left with scraps. So that's all part of that, owning that role as the CEO. And I think that was my big revelation, even, that came out of the horrible experience, right, of opening
Mhm.
up that P&L, was that it was like, wait a second, no one's going to do this for me. Like, no one's going to step in and figure it out. And I think that sometimes we all kind of wish that somebody would, but it's like, no, really, you as the CEO, I call it like the cash flow CEO, because it's the CEO who also understands the cash flow and the numbers of the business.
Mhm.
Um, it's so powerful to own that role and then be able to scale the revenues and the profits, because you understand how the maths in your business.
Yes.
It doesn't
Well, and
feel
just
like,
like the full picture. Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, everything you're describing, Belinda, therapists relate to. Like, they don't pay themselves, they hit a glass ceiling. They're like, I can't charge $500 to a client if that doesn't feel like that's affordable to the clientele they serve. So
Mhm.
there's like a lot of like emotional narrative in there of like avoidance, or I'm not going to pay myself for 3.5 years. Like, that's why you saw such a big reaction from me in this video. Like, oh, yeah, I've heard that all day, every day. Of the
Yeah.
first
And
thing they
I
think of
think,
is they don't count that as income. They're just like, oh yeah, it's just money over here. It's just a business, but it's not my money. It's very interesting,
mm,
that shift. Mm-hmm.
yeah. And I think that's part of understanding the money well enough and understanding it in more black and white terms so that you can. And I too have seen that challenge of, it's almost like you know so much about your clientele, like, and the patients and stuff, that I think sometimes it does get hard, because you know the rest of the situation that you're in,
Mm-hmm.
that they're in. And though I think that it's also really important to stay committed to what you want for you and your business, what you feel like will best support them. Like, I never want somebody to not offer a bigger package, for instance, right? Because you think, oh, they can't afford it. Because I can tell you, people afford what they desire, what they want,
Mm-hmm.
right? I see it sometimes in so I did personal finance for 12 years. Literally, like, wrote a book with a psychotherapist on it, like, love that whole personal finance space. And then I just got to, it's called self-worth to net worth, go figure. And then though, I got to the point where I was like, gosh, my professionals are kind of capped, because they can, like, get a better job, get a raise, get a promotion, or start a side
Right.
hustle. And then we have an unlimited ability to make money. And I think therapists are a little bit in this, like, in between, where it feels like you're almost in that same corporate structure, but yet you have this skill set that
Mm-hmm.
could translate in a different way to create this unlimited ability to make money. And I would see it all the time in the personal finance space. The people would, like, go on a vacation, right? And then you think they couldn't afford it. And it's like, well, they found a way to pay for it. They
Mm-hmm.
cut back on groceries for a few months. They didn't do XYZ, and they found a way to pay for it. And I think that sometimes we have to be careful not, like, counting the money in other people's pockets You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
feeling like
Assuming, really.
we
Hmm.
know or assume what somebody can afford or what's really in their budget, so to speak, because that's projecting our own money limited beliefs on them. And I believe like there is a price for every buyer and a buyer for every price. So like there is absolutely people who will want whatever your higher program is. Like if you want to do a retreat, if you want to do extended, sessions, if you want to add in hypnotherapy, like whatever it is, people will find a way if they feel like it will really serve them, if they are
Hmm.
connected to the transformation that they'll be able to get from that experience.
Right. Right. And I love that you have this income calculator that really just makes this like very tangible versus a lot of
Mm,
people in my experience as a financial therapist, they're like, I want to make this amount of money, but like there's no actual like rooted reason. It just sounds good or feels good, or it's like, this just sounds like an awesome idea. But then to
yeah.
have something that's like, okay, that's your number you aspire to. How do we actually get there? I love this tool that you have for folks.
Yeah, well, that's why we created it, right? Because people would, and it's interesting actually, because part of what it did was it started to highlight that they had this arbitrary goal of $100,000. And when they actually did the math, that isn't even enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, it feels like, oh, that's my big goal. And then they actually get there or they do this math and they're like, well, that's only going to pay me like 3 grand a month. Like, I kind of want to make more from working this gig full time because I certainly could make more if I was working for somebody else or in another
Mm-hmm.
role or whatever. And I'll say that sometimes people think that they don't want to figure it out because then they'll know and then they'll know that they need to be making more. But I will
Mm-hmm.
tell you, it's very helpful information because then we can really look at your offers. We can make sure you're creating enough profit from your offers. We can add some extra revenue streams if we need to, or just really help you get more creative because otherwise you're just permanently disappointed.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know what I mean? Like if you're not honest with yourself, and then if you don't do this kind of math, then you're just always feeling like it's just never enough. And it's like, right, it isn't enough.
Right.
And so
We
we need
haven't
to
got
be
there yet.
clear on what would be, and then we can intentionally figure out, like, okay, well, if we, and this is a lot of what we'll do for our cash flow CO students, is to look at, okay, how much do you want to make? And what would we need to sell to be able to do that? And then it just helps drive all of the other behaviors.
Right.
Like, okay, then that's why I do need to do marketing, or I do want to speak in front of these groups, or I do, want to like try these other creative things. Because I feel
Mm-hmm.
like therapists naturally often get stuck in this dollar for hour hamster wheel that's happening, right? It's like you have X number of hours that are available and you're charging Y or Y and Z if you take insurance and don't take insurance, Um, but then you end up being capped. Like then the
Right.
math will math a certain way and then you're always going to feel capped. And it's important to recognize that and then recognize, well, are there other alternatives that you could be adding to it or other ways that you could
Mm-hmm.
get creative so that you don't have to feel like that's all there is? Like,
Yeah.
and sometimes there are just ways, sometimes there are smaller ways. Like I've had clients who, have gone virtual instead of doing it in person. That started to save some time just because there'd be like 15 minutes sometimes of like transition time that you don't have if
Sure.
it's virtual,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or they've found ways to batch more. Like sometimes we'll have people that'll come be like, well, I see 2 clients on Monday, and then I see 3 clients on Tuesday. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, you're literally seeing clients every day. Like that would
Mm.
be crazy for me. And so then once we start to batch it, it makes for busier days. But now all of a sudden they have 3 like full days available
Yeah.
to like
To like have
build
that time
business.
freedom. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, finally creating that time freedom for themselves. And sometimes that even is just such an initial first step to not feel so on that hamster wheel like every day. I'm serving clients, I have to show up, I have to look good, I have to like put on makeup, I have to like do all the things. Um, and even that sometimes is a good initial first step, to batch like, and I think part of it, right, is that we want to serve our clients, we want to try and be convenient for them, and we need it to work for you as the business
Right.
owner, and
Boundaries.
the money side to work. Yeah, boundaries are tough sometimes, right? And and like scope creep and creeping past boundaries and all of that can be difficult. But I will say that the more that you can start to find that for yourself, that I have always found that they'll actually be respected, like
Mm,
that people want to actually hold better boundaries. So when you can hold boundaries, it's like, oh, that's possible. Like
right.
then it starts to show them, well, if you can hold boundaries, then maybe I can hold better boundaries too, and you can role
Hmm.
model it for them instead of feeling like you can't hold boundaries and you need to be so accessible, you
Right. And
know?
then that leads to burnout, which is a big piece of the work that I do, of people feeling like I need secondary income or additional income streams because I'm burning out and I don't want to see more clients in those days that I'm working. So I
Yeah,
love all of the things you're saying. It's all very like validating to the work that I'm doing and you're doing and the work that
so
therapists
good.
want to do.
Yeah.
For viewers who are listening to this going, this sounds amazing. Tell me more. Where can they find more information about the program that you've alluded to? And we'll have some links below the video, of course, but what do you want them to know about that?
Yeah, all the things. So good, Car. So let's see. So if you are watching this timely, like this first week of February, we're doing this new event all about what we call high profit offers. And part of it is it's actually shifting the way you're even thinking about what you're charging and how you're charging. And then I even give you three specific offer types that you can be adding to your current suite, so to speak, of
Ooh,
what you offer, so that it really starts to position everything right and to really give you things to sell that don't just feel like they're in this time for dollar. And so I feel like if you can get into that, jump on in, because we're doing it three times, like the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all different time zones. It's interesting because
ooh,
even though most of what we do is in US dollars, like we mostly have US clients, we have several clients in Canada, we've had Australia, England, Portugal, like all over, right? And so I'd say jump into the high profit offers, check out the calculator because I think that will be very eye-opening. And then if you feel like, gosh, I want to get more creative. Like I have a coaching business and I really want to grow that, or like I know that I need to own the money and the number side differently. I think a lot of times, therapists start because they have this huge heart and they want to support people in this like special way that they can do, but then they never really learn the business side. And I think a lot of
mhm,
business coaches
exactly.
are more marketing and visibility coaches. And I want to actually teach them the business, right? So being able to understand the money and the business side, that's more inside cash flow CEO. I'll put the link for that. We're opening up applications and we do 3 enrollments a year. And so
Ooh,
this is our first enrollment for 2024. And then if you miss this still, like you can fill out the application, it would just be for the next one.
right,
But we
right.
never have anybody that's like, I'm glad I waited. They're all like, oh my God, this was so eye-opening. Like, how did I not have you in my life for the last 5 years? Because
Mhm,
people often just tolerate and they get really frustrated and like they're not really sure, how they can um, escape this hamster wheel, how they can create something different. And I'm all about growing and scaling without the burnout. And I bring some of that like expansion and creativity to say, okay, what you've been doing hasn't quite been working. How do we take what has and then create new systems or
mhm,
support? Sometimes it's like you need an insurance payer, you need a bookkeeper, like maybe there's resources that you need that would also help too. Like we can make it easier for you between the two of us, like we're a heck of a tag team. So I think I'll handle the money business side and then, there's a whole bunch of other things you're going to be able to help them with. Um, and I think that it starts with a commitment and
mhm,
an awareness, like a realization that I think we often fear change, just like as human beings. I'm
mhm,
sure you see that all the time
right.
with clients, with um, patients, even. And I actually fear being stuck in the same place more. So I think
Mm,
that if I allow myself to fear that more, it will drive me to change. Like, so instead
right.
of resisting change, I'm like, actually, I love growth. I love learning. And once I have that, then it's like, okay, what does that open up, right? What does that become
Mhm,
possible? And that's what I can't wait to start to show you. And I'm big on Instagram at Own Your Money. So, tag us over there. I'll reshare you. And I just think that there are too many people that don't understand this and feel ashamed that they never learned it, right? And it seems like everybody else has it handled. They likely don't either. Just to put that out there. I remember I was
Yeah,
on a radio
to
show once.
normalize that.
How do people keep up with the Joneses? And I was like, the Joneses don't necessarily have money either. Like, they are my clients too, you know? And so I think that it's the same thing in this online space. It's like we have this comparisonitis and we think like, oh, those people are killing it. You have to remember, like, you're just seeing their highlight reel, right?
Right.
So what we can do for you is we can have you all the way through, like authentically, right? Be able to understand how to use money as a tool and how do you really structure your business and your offers in a way that you get to take home more and really enjoy your business again. I think so many of us start our business because we want more freedom. And then
Hmm.
we just create a job, like with a terrible
Yeah.
boss that makes us work all the time. And if we're honest about it. And
Yeah.
so,
It's like
wait
I
a
work more
second,
now
like,
than ever. Yeah.
what's that?
Working more now than ever with this horrible
Right.
boss.
I know. It's like we leave a 9 to 5 and now we have a 24/7 where we're just like working all the time. And so I think that if you just get honest with yourself and you're like, wait a second, I do want something better for myself. Like they're right, and then we want to support you to own that and to say like, well, what don't I know yet? I am all about the growth mindset concept, right? It's not that you have to know everything. It's just like being clear on what you do know and then being willing to say, okay, what do I need to learn?
Yep.
Right? And I am very non-judgmental about it. I've been through so much myself in the last 16 years that I'm like, come under my wing. Let's teach you all the things that you need to know that no one ever taught you. And I am here to
Yes.
support you. So let's
Oh,
do it.
I love it. Yeah, this is like so inspiring for I'm sure many viewers who are like, I need to know the nuts and bolts of my business. It sounds like this is a space where they can do that in a vulnerable but compassionate way where they're not judged for not knowing what they don't know. So I think that's important to emphasize for this audience of therapists who are like, yep, really great therapists, don't know how to do business necessarily if we don't have that background. Hmm.
Yeah, a lot of places just like you're taught to do your skill, but you're not necessarily taught like the business side. So we have
Right.
a proven system that we take people through so that they really feel like, yes, they understand how they need to think as like to take on that CEO identity in a whole new way. But then also, how do you have the money systems in place? How do you really have the right strategy in place and
Hmm.
the right support system? And then once you line that up, then you feel like a whole new level of confidence because you feel like, okay, now I'm off to the races. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm thinking of one therapist even and financial therapist actually. And so she has like a whole therapy practice. And so first what we did with that was we were growing that. And so we're systemizing that. She put in like oftentimes there's just so much that you can do that you just don't even think or know that you can do.
Hmm.
Like she made a decision that she does not take insurance. So she was fielding so many calls though of people that only wanted insurance. So now we set up like an initial automation at the beginning, right? That screens for that. So now instead of talking with 100 people in a year, she'll probably talk with less, but there'll be
Hmm.
better fits, right? So there are things that we can do, right? To be like streamlining your time and streamlining your business. And then she has this new pool of people. And now she almost made like an agency model. So she has other therapists that it's coming in at the top end and then she's filtering them. So then they're doing more of the work. We're going to start to reduce her work because she just hired another therapist. So we're building this whole like practice over here. And then over here, now we're building a whole financial therapy coaching practice. And these rates are like double the rates of what she's doing over here because now we created a whole system that she's taking people through over 6 months. And she can now is like super clear on the results that she can create with
Right.
somebody over that period of time. And so we took what was like felt overwhelming and kind of all over the place. And I feel like I'm chasing two rabbits to be like, okay, now I have this business,
Hmm.
rolling along, and now we're growing this business. And I just signed my first like $3,888 client, which is way more than I've ever done over here. So now she's like, this is amazing, And
Yeah, like something
um,
different. Hmm.
yeah, 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 yeah. And we just want to open up that possibility for you too in watching. So thank you so
Beautiful.
much.
Yeah.
It's
Of
super fun.
course, I appreciate all the things that you're doing, especially this income calculator. I feel like, as you said, kind of opens the eyes to what do I need to work on and how do I need to work it. So we'll make sure viewers that we'll put all those links below so you have those from Belinda. Belinda, thank you so much for sharing what you do. And I'm so glad we've connected in this place of knowing the numbers with the financial therapy aspect and emotions of money. Thank you again for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you.